everyone. Welcome back to the Forward Thinking Podcast. Chrissy here and Charlie.
Hello.
It's the new year. It's the first working day of the new year. It's a cold, blustery one here in California, so I assume it's like that everywhere.
And I think Slack's down, so everyone probably has a day off today now.
So everyone's going to ease back into it, I guess, today.
Or we'll all realize how nice it is without Slack.
True.
Maybe.
But then you get more email. So
True.
Pick your poison, I guess. So we're starting off this year. As you know, we've delved into a lot of topics around marketing operations and demand generation. And we wanted to bring more tips to you guys around even more topics when it comes to B2B marketing, specifically around marketing strategy, go-to-market strategy. And today's episode is really geared toward those marketers who are developing a marketing strategy. And we're going to talk about basically what we have called in the past the golden rule of marketing. So market to others like you would want to be marketed to. But also, it's just really an example of how to use empathy or create empathy for to come up with a great marketing strategy. And I think you see this other places. So we're not saying anything that's brand new, but we have an exercise that many of you could go through to help you build that and also decide on maybe a better marketing strategy for your prospects. So Charlie, you're the one who kind of brought this up to me as like just a general exercise, for our prospects for our clients to go through when in workshops. And so could you dive into a little bit about, what that exercise is and why it's important?
Sure. And to set the context as well, why we started thinking about this is, there's a lot of marketing out there that I think people put out into the world that they themselves wouldn't respond well to.
Yeah.
Examples would be cold email list, email blasts. That's a classic example. But there's lots of different examples out there for marketing that just doesn't really hit the mark, doesn't resonate with people. And it's really surprising. I find it's really surprising that we still see companies doing that because one, the results are poor, even if they do get some results, but the results are poor. The bang for buck isn't really there.
Yeah.
But also it just seems so clear to me that when people are building this strategy, they're not really thinking about what they would respond to themselves. Mm-hmm. Because we actually come across this a lot where we'll ask people, they're coming up with an idea for a campaign or they're coming up with their strategy and they're including some marketing in there that, is this in this category. And I'll just ask them, so if you were on this list, right? Yeah. And another company was targeting you like this, what would you do? Would you respond? When you get a completely obviously standard cold email from a company you've barely heard of, what do you do? And 99% of the time, they say they unsubscribe, they ignore, they delete, they don't like it, it leaves a bad taste in their mouth. So I've always wondered, why do they then turn around and then do that to other people? Mm-hmm. So we came up with, or we've other people have talked about this, or we're kind of reinventing the wheel here probably. But, market like you would want to be marketed to. Mm-hmm. And this is a good time now at the beginning of 2021 where people are trying to come up with their marketing strategy to really get to the bottom of that and understand like how do we actually create that empathy? How do we understand how we would want to be marketed to and then build that into our plan? Mm-hmm. A lot of times when people are going through their marketing plan, they're looking very much kind of externally, who do we want to target? The personas, the accounts, and then they'll work backwards from there and say, okay, like how best should I, target those people? But one exercise that we find really powerful is to actually, in addition to that, is to add this other step, which is what we want to talk about today.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned the channels part, but I think we can even take that even further and like talk about how we deliver those messages. What type of, conversational marketing is big, right? So that goes even down to what does the copy look and sound like? Is that up with the times? Is that resonating? And even beyond just like what we consider a marketing strategy, look even into sales and SDR, and are they incorporating the same methodology as well? Because that's really key too. You know, you want to spread the word for this, because if you can also then get your salespeople, your SDRs to have that empathy for the prospect, they'll probably be talking to them a bit differently, you know, targeting them a bit differently, maybe not, you know, sending all these like blanketed emails. And so I think even part of that is like, how do you even take that further into everything?
Yeah, it's the whole marketing strategy, right? Mm-hmm. So the exercises, and I think it does work well in a group setting. So if you are going through some kind of planning exercise right now with multiple stakeholders, just get everyone to, and you don't have to get too in the weeds and come up with, you know, multiple pages for this, but get everyone just to write, you know, a dozen bullet points on the type of marketing that they've personally been targeted with and that they've resonated. Or or the other way to look at it is, if someone had to create the perfect marketing plan to target you, what would be on that? Mm-hmm. Right? Like what would be the perfect marketing plan to target yourself? And then that gives you an idea of what is not on that list, mm-hmm. right? Because I'm probably, like the example I gave earlier, buying a big list and sending mass blasting a load of generic emails. It's probably not going to end up on your list of how you would target yourself. Therefore, you should include that thinking into your planning process, and really understand like why we then add that into our marketing to other people. And there's going to be more examples than that, but that's kind of the general gist of it.
Yeah. Or even, where do you spend your time? Because if you'll start to notice like how people would want to be marketed to will also give you insight into where they're more likely to take in that marketing, messaging, content. Because I think people still fall back on maybe some traditional channels that maybe like are starting to become a little bit stale. Or, you know, when do you often go to like a content syndication website to download something? It's very, no offense to all that, but you know, it depends on what those channels are, but really start to think about your prospect and also where they're spending time. Because if you think about yourself too.
Yeah. And I could hear people say, oh no, but I am in marketing and I target people in IT, or I am in marketing and I target, you know, people in HR. But we're all still human beings, mm-hmm. right? We all want to be approached, and none of us wants to. Sorry, when I say we want to be approached, we all want to be approached in the right way. We all don't want to feel like we're being marketed to.
Right.
Like it's not like someone in IT is desperate to be marketed to, and people in marketing are not. Like, or if anything, it's the opposite. Mm-hmm. Like most people in marketing are far more receptive to marketing mm-hmm. than other people. So even this, you could even say this isn't going enough, because if you feel like you're receptive to certain marketing tactics and strategies and communication styles, etc., it might not even be enough, because your target audience might even be even less receptive to that. But it still is a good place to start, and it gives you a big list of probably what not to do.
Yeah.
Right. There's still going to be a lot of work you need to do on what to do, mm-hmm. but it should take out a lot of the crap that just so many companies are still doing. Mm-hmm. It just isn't working, and and if you ask them that question, they would not want to be targeted in that way.
Right. Yeah, and I think we've talked about this before, even coming into this year, but when it comes to the whole revenue team and being on the same page, and that means working cross-functionally. I think this is a great exercise to go through off the bat. If that's one of your goals for 2021, which it should be, this is great to get everyone across that revenue team into one place. And yes, you know, we all can't get together in person, but there's some great tools, even simple things like just put up a Google Doc, have an area for each person, have them all at one time, start to note down all those notes at one time, or use a tool like Mural where you can like have different sticky notes people can add on to. There's really cool things you can do now, even not being in the same room with each other, which I know is a bit hard to try and, you know, recreate in this setting, but it's doable. It's possible, especially with this exercise. And I think you'll come away with, as a group, right? And just like I said, if sales is part of this, or sales leaders, they get that idea of empathy, it's going to translate across the whole team, which is great, because if marketing's the only person doing it, but then sales isn't, you're then going to lose your prospect once they hit sales.
Yeah. And I think once you go through this, you'll be able to come up with your list of commandments or your list of rules about kind of what you will and will not do.
Yeah.
And that should be across all of your revenue team, right? CS, sales, marketing. And it's a good point about sales. Like I speak to a lot of clients and they'll mention, okay, yeah, in marketing, we're very considerate about how we target people, but sales, they're just getting tens of thousands of names of Zoom info and just sending them the same email, and it's just really not working, and we're getting complaints and all this bad stuff. So, but if you included sales in the conversation, or at least maybe the head of SDR, maybe some senior salespeople, head of sales, and then got them to write down the best way to target them. Mm-hmm. I'm sure they're not going to write on that list, oh, I love it when I get added to a cold list and just spammed, 3 emails a week from a company I don't know, you know? So if they then write, that they don't like that and they do like, something else, that's on your rules. And then a lot of the problem that happens when sales is running that is that it's hard to get them to stop, right?
Right. Yeah.
Because it's like they're like, but no, we've got to make our number. This is what we're going to do. But if you've gone through that exercise and you've all come to the conclusion that is not the right thing to do,
yeah,
and then they start to do that, like in 2 quarters' time, because they've probably forgotten, you come back and say, look, we all said this wasn't a very good idea at the beginning. You wouldn't want to be targeted like that, and you have a much better, that's a much better approach of getting them to do the right thing. And this isn't a marketing versus sales thing. It could go the other opposite direction.
Totally.
Just, it often, there's often that disconnect in companies where the two teams are working differently. But if you can bring them in to have this shared empathy for your customers and prospects, then hopefully the general marketing plan across those two and sales plan will be consistent with all of your rules that you've just come up with.
Totally. You kind of read my mind, because I think that this is that sticking point with sales, or the other way around. If one group is telling someone not to do something, but then not giving them ideas on this is what you should do instead, they're just going to keep doing that thing because they need some way to, like you said, to try and like meet their goals or hit their number. Mm-hmm. And without the other options, or even if they don't know the other options, they're just going to continue to do that, and treating this less like a dictatorship. Marketing can come up with whatever plan they want, but if they're just telling people what to do instead of really getting them to buy in to that whole strategy, it's going to be so much harder. And you want to, you want the teams to have like some creative recreation, like the SDR team and the leaders and of the sales team are going to also maybe know what works best. But having that conversation, I think, is super important, and like less finger pointing, like you said. And, so.
Yeah, I think coming up with a marketing plan is really hard, right? Yeah. And a lot of times, everything that you do, you're going to iterate on, you're going to improve, you're going to learn across the year. And like, you're not just going to like set a plan in motion from the beginning of the year and just 100% stick to it. But coming up with how to, best communicate with your prospects, how to best create pipeline, how best to create revenue, all of that. It's very complicated. There's a lot to it, and it can be really hard, and it takes a long time to really think about that. But one thing that's easy, and that's why I like this exercise, is just knowing what you like.
Yeah.
Like you could literally get people in a room for an hour, give them half an hour, or like 20 minutes at the beginning, just write down kind of the marketing that you're into. Mm-hmm. And then you've got just like this kind of foundation that you can then apply to the more complicated, well thought out strategic marketing plan that you're going to develop. But then you're going to protect yourself from making the mistakes, the big mistakes. Like we said, the type of marketing that everyone knows isn't the best, but they still do it anyway because they haven't thought about, oh, I hate this. Like, because they know it's not the best because they don't respond to it, but they haven't thought about it that way.
Or so because it's easy, or because they don't know what are the other options. And so that's why I think that this is a good exercise, because then you can have the chance to think, okay, where should I point my direction, like my effort to otherwise?
Totally.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to maybe go the next step on the next episode of Forward, or one coming up probably later in January, right? As a part 2 to this, like once you've done this, what could be some kind of framework for a marketing plan, and what could be kind of a general good start to pull together a marketing plan, like tactics and strategies that we see that work consistently that you could maybe bend to individual circumstances?
Yeah. So part 2 will be, we'll put ourselves in your shoes, like after you've done this type of exercise, and what are the areas or things that you would do to start? Because for a lot of the people listening, and you might have different strategies, even a product-led strategy, you even need to think about, what's the type of marketing that we do within our own product? What's that experience like? And so for anyone listening to that's thinking this is still something you can do, just because they're not just these channels to try and attract your prospects. Your product is attracting your prospect. And so,
well, that's a good point, right? Like if one of the answers to the question of how you like to be marketed to is like, I like to just go sign up online for a free trial, work my way through the product myself, depending on the product, that could be, that could give you an idea of maybe you could try and implement that your company. And like, that is a good experience. And or if you already have that, like, how do you like being nurtured, like within the product? Like it's not necessarily what we're saying isn't a specific tactic. It's not really a specific strategy. It's just a way to uncover what's a good place to start in terms of what you want to look at for your strategy, and a good list of what not to do.
Totally. Yeah. So on the next episode, we'll go through that. So yeah, this is, New Year is all about change, starting fresh, having new. And I think for everyone who's been listening, we're talking about more and more how the revenue team should be working together. This is a great place to start. And on the part 2 to this, after you've hopefully done this exercise, you can, listen in with your ears, or watch the next episode and kind of hear about how we would develop that plan and where to start. And with different budgets, you might be just starting out building a marketing strategy for the first time. And this is still an exercise I think you should do. So yeah. I hope you enjoyed that and gets your, head thinking for this time of planning. You may have already done some planning, but for some of us, it's starting with the end of the quarter at the end of this month. So thanks for joining, and we'll see you on the next episode of Forward Thinking.
This is Charlie. So if you liked what you heard, hit like on the platform where you watched this. Also, leave a review. Honestly, we would really, really appreciate it. You can also subscribe where you listen to your podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or even YouTube. And make sure you subscribe to our newsletter, which is packed full of exclusive content, updates for events or courses that we might be doing, all designed to elevate your marketing operations and B2B strategy. See you next time on Forward, and Forward it up.